Hi,
Okay.
I'm Rocio. I'm one of the co-founders of Neurodivergent Parenthood, and welcome to the Neurodivergent Parenthood chat.
Hi, I'm Frankie. I'm also part of Neurodivergent Parent. And we've got a question that we've been working on at the moment. We've been talking about just why is it so hard for neurodivergent parents to think about themselves? So, Rosia, what are your thoughts?
Um, so yeah, by just interacting with the community, people within the neurodivergent parenthood community and friends and all, I've been noticing how tricky that is. I think we're not thinking about ourselves and what we need unless there's something happening to our kids, and unless I can see that we're naturally really focused on what is going on with our kids. I think I've seen that a lot of our kids happen to be neurodivergent too, so we're really focused on it. But I can see that it's like almost breaking a wall to kind of start opening up to this question, right, about what we need. So
Yeah, I think um from my own work, like my original work, I'm an educational psychologist, so my work comes from supporting children who have additional needs. And that obviously comes up a lot. Neurodivergence comes up so much. And the reason why I got so interested in this in the first place was just the number of times where I was working with a kid who was neurodivergent, but the parents supporting that kid were like just getting themselves so stressed, or they were struggling to regulate. And, and like the number of there just is such a lack of support for parents out there around that. But I think what's really interesting is people start there. A lot of people, I know we see, lots of like facts and figures around this as well. You probably might remember, but so many people don't like the first time they even come across the idea of neurodivergence is actually thinking about their kids' needs. So sometimes it's actually the impetus for it. Whereas for other families, parents like they had neurodivergence when they were like, well, sorry, they were given a diagnostic label sometimes. Like the kids didn't normally lead that, but there was people around a child gave them a diagnosis or gave them assessments for it, or said, oh, you've got ADHD, you've got autism, or whatever else. Um, and then it's almost like we think of these things as a childhood. It literally until 10 years ago, ADHD was a childhood disorder. That was the wording for it. It was a childhood disorder. And we
yeah.
literally thought that it was a thing that stopped existing. And it's like, no, what these kids turn into adults and turn into parents. So yeah, there's two different groups. I think some people who were aware of their neurodivergence, even if it wasn't called that when they were younger, and then now like rediscovering what that means as a parent. And these other parents who find out about their kids' like difficulties, and then it starts to like trickle through and they start to understand themselves.
Yeah, that's very interesting what you say, because I also noticed that there are kind of two type of neurodivergent parents. The ones that already are kind of at the other side of the journey, where they already confronted the reality of their own needs and challenges, and they already kind of embracing this label, right? Like I'm neurodivergent or I'm neurodiverse. And there's the other type of group of neurodivergent parents that they still find this very scary. So I can see that I'm learning that these neurodivergent parents, which they have neurodivergent kids as well, like many of us do. And it's like, I'm still figuring out how to support my kid with their dysregulation, with their neurodivergent needs. And I find that really challenging, and I'm confused. I don't know what to do. So thinking of the possibility of me being neurodivergent as well, it's like, oh my gosh, like please don't bring that to me, because it's too much to think at the moment. Like I don't know what I would do if I think of myself as neurodivergent yet, because I'm still finding really tricky to accept that my kid might be neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And so I can see this kind of process, and that it can take a while to overcome this kind of wall of fear of like that could be facing the fact that you as a parent are also having these challenges.
Yeah, I think for other people as well, it can be like this light bulb moment. It's
Mm.
really interesting. Like the number of times where I've heard parents like you can just literally you can almost see the cogs turning, like they're just like, oh right, they do find that difficult. But I also find that difficult. And at first it becomes like, oh, I find it difficult too, so it must be normal, like quote unquote normal. But then slowly it becomes like, Oh, I find this difficult too. And actually, I had a really hard time when I was younger. And suddenly it becomes these layers of things. Like I literally spoke to a mum a couple of days ago who was talking about her experiences and being like, well, actually, I found it really hard to make friends when I was a kid. And I was really lonely. And the pace of stuff at school didn't match me. Like I wanted to go and follow my interests and that wasn't allowed. And I was always getting into trouble. And it's like she'd either forgotten it or blanked it out or it just didn't feel significant. And then it's like by discovering and finding out about your own kids' neurodivergence, suddenly all this stuff kind of slots into place. And then you hear people be like, that's what I'm like. Um, and I think it's really interesting because sometimes it can, yeah, I can understand that's like a wall of fear. And then you're trying to like analyzing yourself. It's just not easy. It's just not easy because everyone's living in their own world, looking through their own two eyes. So that's impossible to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think even when you can have the skills to analyze yourself, I think there's a degree of like taboo in thinking that you're worthwhile doing that too, because you put all your energies and all your love and all your focus on your kid. Um, it's really hard to say like, no, actually, I'm worthy. I deserve trying to work out how to make this work for myself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touch into such a very interesting points of view and perspectives on this. One of them is that when you become an adult being neurodivergent and you haven't realized, you never get an assessment, you never received a diagnosis. When you choose that, you get used to get on with life, with things, and it's almost like I wouldn't say blackout, but I'm kind of almost like, yeah, there's a level of amnesia that needs to happen. Is like when you have a kid and you go into labor and you kind of blank out all of the hardships of giving birth, right? Because you cannot remember how challenging it was, because otherwise you would never want to have another kid. That's something happened to many moms. But it's similar when you have challenges being a neurodivergent kid yourself. You almost don't want to remember that too much because you think that you overcame that and you're not an adult and you just get used to get on with things. And now almost facing that, reflecting back into your kids that they also happen to be neurodivergent, having similar challenges, you start looking back and be like, oh, right, think I experienced something similar when I was a kid. Like in my case, I think for me, after I was assessed and diagnosed with ADHD, because I was diagnosed when my son was about 18 months old. I remember that one of the things, it took me a while to make sense of this information. It was like a grieving process for me. It took me a couple of years to get myself, and even maybe more, to kind of embracing the strength and embracing that I wasn't like an anomaly. But then what happened is like I was more informed on my challenges, and now every time that I see his challenges, I can relate more and understand them better. So that for me is a sense of relief that I can understand them better, because I have such a similar challenges sometimes right now, and I used to have them when I was a kid. So it's almost like a tool being able to empathize better with his own needs.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's something about like none of us are blank slates. We're all bringing whoever we were beforehand into our parenting right now. And there's also something about the idea of if you're neurodivergent and you have some neurodivergent strengths. Like I love it when I speak to a parent and they were like, my child's like this. I've done all the research. I've read everything that could be. That's it. And it's like they literally hyper focused into this huge deep dive to try and unpick it all. And like they're able to sometimes put some of the emotions aside to kind of analyze it. And I think that's really if that's sort of part of your neurodivergent strength, that's really cool. The other thing I was thinking about is like the pressure of like, the phrase adulting, like pressure of just you're supposed to have your shit together as an adult. And I feel like when you don't, that becomes like a self-blaming. That becomes like that's my problem and my fault, but I won't let that happen for my child. So
Yeah.
you end up putting all the energy into your child, but it's almost like because you feel you ought to have sourced it out by now, even if you haven't. And like no one's very good at being like, I actually don't know. how to regulate myself, or I don't know how I don't know how my neurodivergence affects how I interact with people. I don't know about that because you're just getting by. And what we talked about like previously as well is like a maladaptive habits. That's what we've got a course as well. And then we talk about these maladaptive habits, like these habits that you use that you just about made work. They're a strategy that just about works. It's not a good strategy, it's not an effective strategy, it's not the best strategy. It like just about works. And I think that we can become very reliant on those because and like investing in yourself to spend the time to find out the best strategy for you. You know, maybe it feels like it's not a good use of your time or you're not deserving of it in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Absolutely. You just made me think of something I thought about this week. It was, I needed to kind of reframe my definition of being an adult. So I realized that for me, being an adult, instead of trying to be thinking that it's about making things perfect, getting things, figure things out, have everything figured it out, I realized that for me, being an adult is more like you become, or you arrived to this place in your life in which you overcame and you went through a lot of hardship, a lot of difficulties and challenges, and you realize that you're not going to let those challenges tear you apart or put you down anymore. And you have the intention to learn and keep learning how to stand on your 2 feet and not let those challenges define you. You know, so it's almost being an adult for me is that having that kind of power to say, I'm going to define who I want to be, how do I want to live my life, and not let these challenges define me. So it's like we all have that power to kind of self-defining and overcoming what we're experiencing. And I think not letting the external messages and what other people say, what society say that we should be doing, how we need to be doing things, and instead finding that kind of inner voice or like, this is how I want to overcome them and I want to learn about it. It's what for me is very key about becoming an adult. That is for me now. So I don't know. Yeah.
I love that. I think there's something there as well, like that idea of parenting yourself. Like, go like I don't know, it's a phrase that I've definitely heard you saying it lots of times before, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what you're doing. And also like as a society, we understand more over time, and maybe the way that neurodivergent people, were parented when they were kids. Like that wasn't coming from the most educated place. I mean, no one's like obviously we're not getting it perfect now by a long stretch, but there was even less understanding about it. There were lots of like, well, they're just a bit weird, or they're just not bright, or they're just whatever it was that was super dismissive of the challenges and also the strengths of people who are neurodivergent. And like we didn't know how to do that. Like people didn't think more than that a few years ago. They should have, but they didn't. And like they didn't have the skill set, they didn't have the knowledge, they didn't have the society, the level of acceptance that is growing. And so it's really amazing that we're able to give this more attentive, more accommodating, more reasonable adjustments, more acceptance to our own kids. But I think that when we haven't received it necessarily ourselves, taking that and giving it to yourself, I mean, it's a gift that you ought to do. If you feel your kid is worth it, you're worth it too. But I don't think that people feel like that. They just end up like zoning in on what they're doing for their kid and not kind of reflecting it back on themselves.
Absolutely. You just made me remember that for such a long time, my kid is now almost 8 years old. After I received the diagnosis and I knew that I was neurodivergent, I felt so overwhelmed by the thought of being a good mom. So overwhelmed. When we started working together, you and I, in creating our first course, The Art of Being Okay as a Neurodivergent Parent, where I was at, it was like, okay, I need to learn how to parent my kid when I was never parented myself by my parents that loved me in different ways, but in a way in which I needed to be parented, like in which I needed to be raised and understand my own needs, who I was as a child. So I kind of had always this kind of gap or this kind of like an empty place in which this void that I'm trying to say, that I had to put up with and make compensating and doing things to get on through life without without making the best I could do with that. But I realized that void, it meant that I didn't know how to parent myself, that I never knew, because I never received the type of parenting that I needed as a neurodivergent child. So when we started thinking of this course, it's almost, I remember it's a bit of a selfish in the sense that this is the course I needed personally in order to be able to feel myself take myself in a good place, or be in a good place, so I could learn how to parent my kid, because now I learn how to parent myself. And what you say is so key, because the way I'm at the moment is like I permanently parent myself. Now it's part of me. It's like I can see the parts of myself that are a little bit insecure, that I need regulation. I need to have cues like, oh, I'm getting dysregulated right now by this situation. I'm starting to feel anxious. This is not a good influence. This is what I didn't work, and be permanently monitoring where I'm at and taking the right action so I can stay as balanced and happy as possible. And that is like an ongoing process. So something I learned from this, working with you and creating our first course, is like, that allowed me now to be more confident that I can be parenting my kid, because I know how to parent myself. So that's part of, I think, what we wanted to create the course for.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And like from our sort of perspective, so my husband has ADHD, and we literally used to have conversations that were like, oh, well, that was a childhood disorder. Like we just had no idea how it translated into adulthood. Like just no idea. And then again, through working with you, Rocio, and this huge project we've been working on, like it's become, there's suddenly an opportunity, and it's like when you start to open to the possibility of like, well, you could learn more about yourself. And that applies to me, that applies to him and our relationship. We could learn more about ourselves. And like, it's almost like there's like a curiosity, like, oh, I just realized why that didn't go right. Like, and it's just it was so amazing to suddenly be like, well, that's not working. Why is that not working? And then to be able to unpick, and like, then to be able to say stuff like, just realize that, like, it's not that you leaving cupboard doors open is inherently irritating. It's that you leaving cupboard doors is irritating for me, because I actually, my sensory needs means I get stressed by all the visual stuff. And it's like it's sort of, it allows you to move away from blame, because you're in a place of just curiosity. And it's not about excusing things, it's about just being more understanding. And I feel like if we could get to a place where people were curious about themselves, that opens you up to so many more possibilities, because it's like, just curiosity is just a form of acceptance in itself. You're just like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that. And you just kind of, it's like a weight gets lifted off you. So that's kind of what I would like all parents, especially neurodivergent parents, just to be a little bit more curious about themselves, so that they can accept who they are. And then maybe there's a possibility for change. And sometimes it's not even that change is necessary. Sometimes it's just that being like aware allows you to kind of, just be at peace with yourself. And that's really that's like a powerful intervention in itself, without you even changing something.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Is that the way you say? Yeah, I think sometimes the best thing the most transformative thing that we can do is understanding ourselves a bit more. So as you said, curiosity is just look at yourself with a bit more kindness, and like seeing, instead of judging yourself or being angry or upset with yourself as a parent, and like curiosity, what happened, what didn't work well, what are you feeling right now? And I think is definitely the starting point of being more compassionate to ourselves and to others. So I think I always think of like, we are the beginning. So if you want to, sometimes we think of being compassionate with other people first, right? And with our kids. And that's important, but we cannot run out of like our own energy and our own capacity to sustain that. Because if we just focus on what others need and be compassionate to them, very quickly you will realize you don't have any energy left to keep carrying that on, and you can burn out, which that happened to me many times before. I realized how important it is to be self-compassionate. So accompanying yourself and bringing the different parts of ourselves that some of us they have still parts of that a little bit insecure, like inner child aspects of ourselves. They need a company, they need nurturing, they need parenting. So there's a part of ourselves that are more in the let's get done, more confident, and we can accompany each other and bringing ourselves together. So we have more of a whole person to share with others and with our kids. So that's part of this process. And as you said, it starts with just understanding and being a bit curious instead of brushing things off or dismissing ourselves or part of ourselves. And instead being curious and accompanying them a bit more. So it's part of, I think, the invitation of you folks that are watching this, like join us in our community, to our Facebook group, Neurodivergent Parenthood group in Facebook, our Instagram account as well. We have really beautiful content that we would like to share, so you can start joining us in this journey too. And yeah.
Absolutely. It's been really interesting to chat about this, and I love that I have no idea where our conversation is going to go, but I love that we finished with a point of be curious, be accepting, being compassionate. That's just amazing. I'd love that for every neurodivergent parent as well. So thanks, Rocio.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Frankie. I love that we just ran with it, and it was just spontaneous and just great conversation to have. So yeah, thank you. I really liked it.
Bye.
Bye.